You're listening to a Countout Podcast.
So, Jack, you're not Curtis. You're Jack Bonza, new member of the Bullet Club and all-round Australian wrestling legend. How's it going?
Good. I can hear my 2-year-old in the background running around, running amok when he's supposed to be in bed. So
we had put this up because you're like, I'm just going to put my son to bed and then maybe we'll talk, and he's immediately disobeyed you.
Yeah, no, he's up and running around. I can hear him.
Like a young Bullet Club young lion. He's already breaking the rules like his old man.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Is that something you need to attend to?
No, I think I'm okay. Yeah. Wife got it. She'll be all right. But yeah. he doesn't sleep very well. Same as that's really the crossover with me and him.
Well, I'm sure she's going to take very good care of it, and I will do my very best to take care of you on this last minute hangout that we're planning now. So Jack was super nice to give up his time today to really just kind of talk about his awesome career, everything that's happened leading up to these New Japan Pro Wrestling Tamashii shows, and everything that's led him to be the newest member of Bullet Club, which is fucking too sweet, I guess. So let's rewind right back, buddy. For anybody that's familiar with interviews I've done with the Faces and Feels show, usually the way I like to start is by asking people who were some of the first faces in wrestling that like drew them into wrestling. I see no reason to break from that formula as it's worked for fucking 2 years. So let's do that. Let's rewind back and think about when you were first exposed to pro wrestling. Who were some of the like your favorites?
So I actually didn't start watching wrestling until relatively late in life. Mm-hmm. So I was 17 or 16 or something before I actually started watching wrestling. And I was training as a pro wrestler less than 2 years after first seeing it on TV.
Wow.
So that was about 2004 I started watching it. I think the reason why that happened is because WWE debuted on Foxtel.
Yes.
At that time, or maybe it was on there beforehand, but my parents got Foxtel for the first time or something, and so that's when I first started regularly watching. Mm-hmm. So I came in smack bang at the end or the middle of the Evolution storyline with Triple H and Batista. So one of the first things I saw was Randy Orton winning the world title, and then the promo where they lift him up on his shoulders and the thumbs up and the thumbs down, and they smack.
Yeah.
So that's actually sort of what sucked me into wrestling in the first place, and then after that. Back in the era of Video Easy, like Blockbuster Video kind of era, there were these dockets you could get that you would pay $5 and you could get 5 weekly videos.
Yeah. And
I would go and rent all the pay-per-views they had because they had a section that was whatever. So that's where I went back and rewatched all the old pay-per-views and all that kind of stuff. So I guess my first favorite was Randy Orton. Mm-hmm. And then I've gone back since then, huge Steve Austin fan and The Rock and Ric Flair and everybody who you would possibly expect from that era. So very basic bitch wrestling fan at first. And it wasn't until a bit later that I started getting into the more indie stuff and all that kind of deal. I laughed because I was on a show, my 9th and 10th ever matches. Mm-hmm. I was on a show with Bryan Danielson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he toured Australia. I didn't know who he was. And it wasn't until later when I got into him and started watching like the match he had with like the unification match against Nigel McGuinness and his run, that I'm like, oh, I had the best wrestler on the planet.
Right there. It was right there.
Especially in Australia. It's become less rare now, but it's still rare, relatively speaking. But at that time, it was insanely rare. Mm-hmm. And I got to meet him and hang out with him. I had no clue who he was and then later he became one of my absolute idols.
Yeah.
So so that was sort of an interesting time. And then since then it's moved on, and you sort of expand your reach since then. So the guys who stick out to me more are more the technical, hard-hitting guys. So always been a big like William Regal fan, and and then obviously Bryan Danielson and that sort of style of guy has always been my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen you live a few times actually with the forays and stuff that you've done with New Japan, in the earlier tour and stuff in Sydney and in Melbourne and things like that. How deep are you into the business now? So if you were training a couple of years after you started watching and stuff. Sorry, how long?
15. So I debuted in 2007.
Right. So you could see how long it was taking me to do that maths. But I'm a podcaster, not a mathematician. But yeah, so a while, deep into it now, but still relatively early in the scheme of things to be jumping in and working with a company like that and using those opportunities. Have you felt that like the COVID stuff really sort of slowed down those opportunities? Like everything was sort of put on pause? Because for a while it was like picking up steam, right?
Yeah, no, it was horrible. I probably don't need to explain to people, but like they shut borders.
Yeah.
Like I think Japan only just reopened its borders to tourists, if I'm correct.
Yes,
like,
correct.
so like if you had a work visa, you could probably still get in maybe. But it blocked any of us who were sort of on the threshold of maybe doing something like that, just bang, like no, not happening anymore.
Yeah.
Even going to New Zealand with the Fale Dojo that's over there, you couldn't do it anymore. Like they shut down all those businesses. Like some of the schools and some of the companies and things that happened were lucky that they survived at all.
Yeah.
Let alone maintaining relationships with a place like New Japan or the wrestlers themselves maintaining relationships with a place like New Japan. So yeah, it very much feels like we're only just sort of, how long have we been able to run events for again? Probably 18 months.
Yeah. You guys had it way worse than us over here in Perth, right? So like, because PWA, you guys were doing like just no fan shows in a warehouse, right? Like you guys were still putting out content for your diehard fan base.
Like I think a lot of the stuff with PWA is because there's such a large group of wrestlers. Like there's probably, I think there are 50 or 60 people who work with or for PWA between the school and the actual on roster, probably even more. So it's part of keeping you sane, like something to do. Like we just sort of do no fan shows just to let everybody stretch their legs and put some content out there and keep engagement alive and let everybody know that PWA still existed. But all that stuff's kind of easy and you have to be so careful. Like all the things on the day, everybody had to be wearing a mask and everything had to be sanitized in between everything just to make sure that if somebody, said somebody's doing something and then like the police or whoever was checking COVID came in and checked so we could show we had a plan and we had everything being done, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was really brutal, especially because we were just getting so much momentum and the association with New Japan, which is only just sort of picking up again now. So yeah, I'd say it effectively killed 3 years.
Yeah.
Or even longer maybe, because even though we weren't down for that long, the time it's taken to rebuild the momentum to get up to the point where we were before the pandemic. We're only just sort of getting there now.
Yeah, exactly. That it's so heavy. I jumped ahead a little bit because it seemed like the appropriate question to go to, but as we rewind a little bit, how then, you're doing indie shows with Bryan Danielson, you don't know who he is. How then do you become involved with PWA? How kind of soon does that sort of begin? Does it exist or what?
Yeah, I think PWA actually so it depends on how you interpret the company. Like PWA Black Label, which is virtually a separate entity from the original PWA, started in 2017. So really, PWA Black Label in and of itself took about 2 years to get to that momentum. Then there was like 3 years off, and now it's starting to come back. The PWA that existed before that, I think, started in Sydney in 2007, which is sort of the spiritual before the Black Label era. But even before that, PWA Melbourne, I think, and I wouldn't even be able to tell you when PWA Melbourne started, but it was definitely before PWA Sydney existed. Had history even before then. So I'm fairly ignorant to that. I mean, because I had I didn't start with PWA, but I think I was started there in about 2009.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up wrestling there for the first time and training with everybody. So yeah, it was relatively soon, but it didn't. In my memory, it's not so soon.
Yeah, exactly.
The little part that seemed so much more prolific than it actually ended up being.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably 2009. I think it debuted.
Yeah. When I think of PWA, I think of you sort of hand in hand in it. So where did you actually? I just sort of assumed you were sort of, it was always your home. So where did you actually start training? And how did you even find training as a person trying to wrestle in Australia?
Oh, I probably did the same thing that anybody else would do. I didn't know it existed either.
Yeah.
And then my dad sort of went, "We've been to wrestling," and he said, like, when you were like 10, I went to an IWA show.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And so then I just Googled it to see, and the first two things that pop up were IWA, AWF, and I don't know if there was even a third one at that period of time. But IWA's website was relatively abandoned. I don't think they actually had a school at that period of time, nor do they now. So I went to AWF, and that was sort of the first foray into it. It was 2.5 hours by public transport from where I lived.
Whoa.
It was a walk to a bus stop, a bus, sometimes a second bus, and then a train, and then a 15-minute walk.
Wow.
And then same deal back. So that's sort of like, I mean, that's actually my entire, like, so much of my training has been like that. Like, it's just some of the actual physical adventures in order to get to training or get to shows are stories on themselves. Like, it's just so crazy just because of where I lived. So there's nothing ever close to me, but I wanted it, so I went and did it.
Yeah. It's that's kind of like the story of Australia a little bit, right? Like, our public transport isn't notoriously great, so it doesn't surprise me to hear that you had to go through a huge mission to get to it. Like, I grew up in Dongra, which was it's like south a little bit of Geraldton, which is a smaller city over here in WA. And to go to high school, I used to catch like an hour and a half bus each way. It's just like the way of Australia, right? So like fucking 2.5 hours though, like. I assume on what was it, a Saturday, or was it like after school, or what are we talking?
It was Saturday, so I'd have to leave at 6 a.m. to get there by 9.
Wow.
And then there'd be a 9 to 11 class.
Yeah.
And then once you did the first couple of months, then you were switched from the 11 to 1 class, then the 1 till 3 class, then the 3 till 5 class was the advanced. But just because, like, it might have been partially because of the trip and just because of me being obsessive. Once I passed the first class, I still went to the first class and just did the second class too, and just did them back to back. So I ended up going and doing whatever class I was supposed to be in and the one before it.
Yeah.
Every time, just because whatever. And then when I got to the 1 o'clock class, 3 o'clock class, let me train with them too.
So you were just doing all classes, basically.
Well, think about it this way. It takes you 2.5 hours to get there and 2.5 hours to get back. And you're physically there for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
So you may as well do the whole day at that stage, right?
You might as well hang out. Like, so that's sort of always been my attitude, but that's always been me too. I've been very hard at training and working and doing all that kind of stuff. Has always been my attitude because I like doing it.
Yeah.
I think if you like wrestling, I don't understand why people don't like training, but
yeah. That's the craft, right? It's like learning and growing and all those things.
That's the deal. And where it was interesting was that probably in 2009, the person who I was dating at the time, Shazza McKenzie, was invited to go to PWA. And because she went to PWA, I went with her, but we went to training. But then there was a training school that was actually very close to the AWF training. Go to that one, then go to the second one. So we'd actually do 2 in one day.
Yeah.
But as back in the day, it's sort of changed in New South Wales, at least now. But back in the day, if you worked for one place, you weren't allowed to work for another place.
Right.
So the fact that even though Shazza got permission to do that one match or whatever, once we were sort of trying to do both, that blew up. So we ended up going with PWA from there, which was the far superior choice. It really wasn't much of a question.
Yeah.
Even at the time. It was just, I think the difficult decision was because I was friends with so many people from the one place, you didn't want to try and leave the friendship group, but, you know, chase the bookings.
Well, exactly right. And, and if one place is going to help you develop more and, improve and stuff. Like you say, it's an easy choice at that stage. And then just hopefully everybody else understands.
Yeah, yeah. And I've always been of the belief too that like you need to train with more than one place if you can. Like you don't want to train with a place that's not very good, but even if there's a top place, if there's another place that's okay or good, do both.
Yeah.
Because you're going to learn more from a range of different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Different points of view, different feedback, all those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you guys begin at PWA, and then, I mean, is it just over time you sort of develop and become more of a part of the company, each time sort of grows and stuff, and you start taking on more responsibility, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I really didn't do much until 2017.
Oh, okay.
Beyond being a wrestler, I actually helped out a lot with Newcastle Pro Wrestling.
Okay.
Which started, I think that started in 2012. So probably from about 2014, I helped more with that kind of place. But see, my background is I have a bachelor's degree in business and a master's degree in accounting.
Okay.
So like I can sort of help with a lot of the business side and things like that because I also had the understanding of wrestling. So I did a lot for them. And they're still going up in Newcastle. They've got some massive shows going on, especially one in December at their City Hall venue, which is always massive. It's like a 700-seater in the middle of Newcastle. It's really cool.
Yeah, cool.
So,
and
that's sort of more my development than that.
Yeah. Do you still have anything to do with them or ever do shows with them? Or it's...
Oh, yeah, no, I still work with them all the time. I train there constantly too because they're two schools. So I'm still halfway in between. So there's the school in Sydney, which is the PWA school, and the school in Newcastle. And I live like halfway in between those two areas.
Nice.
So I actually sort of skip between both. Yeah. So we do tons of stuff together, and I still do all their shows and all their events and stuff. So,
do you hold training classes? Like, do you train people or you just contribute?
Yeah. I'm one of the coaches at both schools. So it just sort of depends on what's going on. In particular, whether I go and attend, but I still take classes frequently. I've done that for years. Part of the other thing is too, like I train in a number of different martial arts and self-defense classes. I was a women's self-defense instructor at one point too, with my dad. So there's lots of like things in that you can learn from with teaching and training and all the little different things you can throw in. And between all the different schools I've been to over the years, you get quite a versatile move set, or experience set, like with all the different styles and all the different ways of doing things, and the character study and all the different kind of stuff. So I contribute as much as I can.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. Have you always done martial arts your whole life as well, or was that
like I'm not like a Bobby Fish or something who's gonna be a very serious martial artist. Like I'd get my ass kicked by most ones, but when I was like probably from when I was 10 or 12, I always sort of did some kind of after school martial art thing, which helped a lot in wrestling because I was used to break falling.
Yes.
And I really knew how to do all the rolls and things like that. And I was coordinated and I sort of knew how wrist locks worked and basic defense and stuff like that. I was comfortable with moving my body around because when you start wrestling, the big thing is if you get like 12-year-olds or 15-year-olds, I can't start until I turn 18. What do? Go train in martial arts, go do karate or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or something like that. Because there is such a big crossover. Because the last thing you want to do is try and pick up becoming a pro wrestler, but you've never done any exercise in your life. Because those first days or any of the classes too, like you forget just how brutal the conditioning is on someone who's not used to it.
Yeah. That is one thing that I've noticed sort of pretty common with wrestling and wrestlers since I've been doing interviews and things like that, is that crossover, right? Like that when people tell their stories about when they first started wrestling, you do get people who are like, I did nothing. It was all I ever wanted. It was the hardest thing ever, but I got through it. Or you get those people who had some kind of background and they're like, oh yeah, well, I already kind of took falls. I already kind of knew what that was and I was experienced and I just sort of fell into it.
If there's anything you can do, even if you play footy or something, like just being used to being hit and being used to running or doing stuff like that, it really is very helpful compared to the person who maybe isn't so physically active.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine the breakfall thing is like a huge one because that would be such like a mental hurdle to get over for people who have never done it before. Like I'm going to fall, I'm going to land on my back flat, those kind of things.
Yeah, the actual big one that really comes up all the time is doing a flip.
Mm-hmm.
like not landing on your feet, but a flip into a break fall. For some reason, people can't go head over tits. They just can't do it.
Yeah.
Like throwing themselves backwards and stuff, people can sort of get that. But when you've actually got to jump and flip all the way through, that's where people seem to struggle the most.
Yeah, yeah. It would be. I imagine it would be hard to let go. Sort of let go of that control and flatten out. I imagine I would eat shit if I tried to do it and just like break my neck or something, because I don't know if I could commit to it, if I'm honest. So let's talk a little bit now about New Japan. So the first tours were awesome when I got to see them. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed your matches there. How was it getting the opportunity to run in that tour and be around those wrestlers and be on those shows?
Oh, it was huge. It was ridiculous. Like, I mean, especially when you haven't been around that sort of level of professional environment too. Yeah. Like the thing that always happens to me, and I get this all the time, is people ask, was I nervous? And you got to understand, the wrestle in Sydney, for example, there were 3,400 people at Key Centre. And I wrestled Yuji Nagata. Yeah. Right? So never met him.
Yeah.
Doesn't speak that much English. Yeah. Like, kind of thing. They have their own separate locker rooms. Like there's the Suzuki-gun locker room, there's a Chaos locker room, there's a Bullet Club locker room, and then there's the everybody else who has nothing to do with this locker room. Yeah. And so you sort of get changed in there, and then you don't know where they are. This is a massive stadium thing, like just all the things going on. Then you got to work out a match with somebody who barely speaks English. But I get asked, like, were you nervous? And the answer is no. I wasn't even the slightest bit nervous, because once we had the match down, I was like, okay, I can do everything in that match. Like, that's fine. This is what I practice for. This is what I train for. Yeah. And then you walk out in front of that crowd. Now you're nervous in front of that crowd. No, I'm not nervous in front of that crowd, because there are 3,400 people there who know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And you look at how good this thing looks. Where I get nervous is in front of 20 people in a shitty fucking PCY seat. Yeah. That's where I feel nervous, because I feel like I'm in my underwear in front of a bunch of people who are like rocking up for whatever stupid reason to sort of point. Like, it doesn't feel right. Yeah. But when you have the big screen, when you have the smoke, when you have the music with the massive sound system in a stadium full of people who are there to see the wrestling, that's where you feel comfortable, because it feels right. Yeah. But I don't feel I feel nervous is when everything seems wrong. Yeah. So I guess that exposure to that level of professional environment, just seeing the way they go about things, was a great learning experience. It was really cool. Got lots of positive feedback. Like, I'm backstage, and I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been one of the Young Bucks or something who was there. Like, and then Yuji Nagata comes back to me and I said, so how was it? And then he goes, good. And then just goes into his locker room. And I turn to the other guy, and the other guy's sitting there like drinking a beer or something, just goes, well, it must have been pretty fucking good then. If that's all he said, I went, all right.
maybe you would have been read the riot act if it was bad, but because it was funny.
I think they're very capable of being very critical. They don't give a lot of positive feedback. Yeah. Either it was okay or it wasn't.
Yeah, it's like stern respect. Yeah, yeah.
And that's all good. A lot of it comes down to being respectful, like making sure that, like, because the thing is, you find this too, that when you deal with people at that level, they're the most respectful. Like, they're the most respectful people you find. They're always asking if things are okay, making sure things are good, and doing whatever. Mm-hmm. Because it's just like this, like, if they give respect, sort of get respect kind of thing. So you just kind of make sure. But with that being said, if you do something little that's a problem, I think that becomes a more serious problem. Like, so you need to sort of like, and you don't have to be over the top or silly, but you got to make sure you're on your best behavior when you walk around doing all that kind of stuff. Like if there's catering, you got to make sure if you're on the bottom of the totem pole, you got to make sure that Okada ate first. Yes. Because if you take the last meal and then he walks in and you're sitting there holding this fucking meal half eaten and there's nothing in there, then you know what I mean? That's just you being a dick, because of course he's more important than you. So just walking around and being in that kind of environment, that was just interesting. But it was also nice, because if you are cool with them and do the right things, then they're great. Mm-hmm. They couldn't be easier to deal with as people. So
of course, I mean, that's the Japanese culture, right? I've been fortunate enough to I've been to Japan many times. I've been about 5 different sort of holiday trips to Japan, some of which like month-long trips, and get to really get immersed in the culture and be around people and meet people and all these things. And it really is a very special place and a very respectful culture. And so I can only imagine, like, if you're doing the right things and you're showing that respect to people, you'll get nothing but that back, you know, and it would be really rewarding.
Yeah, and I think everything works better when you do it that way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, kind of in life in general, but especially,
Yeah,
especially that. Let me ask you this: when you talk about, confidence and nerves, am I nervous and things like that? Is there comfort to be found sliding into the persona of Bonza? You know what I mean? Like the persona that you project as a very militant, stern person. And then when you're in that situation, like you say, it's lights, it's smoke, it's all that stuff. Everybody knows the deal. The music hits, and then you just get to fall into him. You know what I mean? And then just walk out as the hardest motherfucker like in the place. Is there protection in that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm just
You're like, I don't know. It's kind of just who I am.
I'm like, yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm not as mean as Bonza is. But no, that's yeah, I think it. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer that. Maybe. Yeah, I think it's something you find comfort in after a while. Like you get used to doing it, and that's sort of what you do. Like wearing the jacket and the tights and everything being sort of just so. And if you're in something that's not that, you can feel like uncomfortable when you're doing that kind of thing. But I think a lot of it does come down to practice and experience. Like when you're wrestling a big match like that, as long as you're doing things that you've done a million times, I couldn't imagine what it'd be like trying to do it. Like we'll do something completely different than what I normally do, and then being in that environment as well.
Yeah.
I suppose it is like you're in your comfortable jeans.
Yeah, exactly. Was Nagata the first non-English speaking wrestler you had faced?
I think so, but that's sort of hard because the timings all jumble in my memory. Yeah, no, I think so. I'm trying to work out because I went to America a couple of times. I can't remember if I wrestled anyone who was a Spanish speaker. But it's something like that. It's probably one of the earlier ones.
Yeah.
It's a different experience. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is people wonder how you do it. It's not that hard. Like wrestling's all body language and stuff like that. So talking to them, and a lot of the other cool thing about the respectful thing about Japanese people, they speak English. Like they may not speak it well, necessarily, but they sort of tend to have enough to get by.
Yeah, more than we have of Japanese, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've made an effort to try and learn Japanese as best I can, but we always end up speaking English.
Bro, I swear I get worse at Japanese the more time goes by.
Are you fluent in Japanese? You said you've been there. And
no,
stuff?
not even a little bit. So the dynamic when we have gone, it's always been my wife and a friend of ours, Momo. And we always have a joke that we've all got a role in the tour group, so to speak, as we get around. Yeah. So Amy is the maps. She organised where everything goes. Momo's the button. She just presses the lift buttons, and I'm the face. And so my job is to speak to everybody. But I speak the least. Momo is Japanese. Like she has a Japanese brother, has grown up like with it. Yeah. Amy can actually read Japanese very well. She's taught herself. She can do it. But because I'm fucking who I am or whatever, they're going to talk to you anyway, and you're the friendliest, and we get nervous, so you have to do it. So all I have is like these confusing conversations with people where I try and get my point across. But there's a magic in that as well. And you've been to Japan? Or
no,
not yet. But you then had interaction, so you would understand this. But like, you try and get your point across, and then what you end up having is this sort of like really nice interaction where you both figure out how to understand each other, and there's a chuckle, and it's this and blah blah blah. And so that's me just bumbling through Japan, and I tend to really like it. And there's part of me that doesn't ever want to be fluent because.
Right.
Maybe then they'll be like, I'm walking away and they're like, this dumb motherfucker that can't speak. You know what I mean? Like, I like the idea that everybody there's perfect and we're all friends and it's all great. You know? Yeah, exactly. So those shows are amazing. Everything goes. Tell me, do the seeds for what recently happened in recent events begin over these events? Is that when somebody like Farley starts to get in your ear and you guys start to discuss the future plans that could be your alignment with a group like Bullet Club?
Yeah, I think so. Like, the first real interaction I had with Farley was when I did a tryout for his dojo.
Oh, okay.
So I think he came over and wrestled, and he wrestled me too. To be fair, it was Mick Moretti and I, the Nations versus Farley's son and Mr. Juicy Gino Gambino.
Yes.
I mean, tag match at PWA, lock, stock, and two sweeting barrels.
Yeah.
We were very proud of that name, but not enough people understood the reference. So then, we did a tryout that day, and then he spoke to me afterwards, and he just seemed very impressed with the tryout.
Yeah.
And he liked the way I was. He liked the Bonza persona. He liked the character and everything that came with it, and the way that I sort of wrestled. I think a lot of the time when it comes down to this stuff, what people don't realize is I use this example all the time. If you're an actor,
yes,
and you're going for a part, and you're going for the son in this family or the daughter in this family, and you're white, but the parents are black, they're not going to hire you, not because you're not a great actor, but because they need someone who's going to be a natural fit for that show. Yeah, they need a black kid, or if the parents are Asian and their natural born child, it's going to be an Asian child. Like, it needs to be something that makes sense, because otherwise it's just kind of like, that's not how genetics works. Like, if they need someone with flowing long blonde hair, I'm not going to get that role. Like, sort of like as a bald redhead, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
When you look at what Farley's after, he wants bad guys.
Yeah.
And they want bad guys who they know are going to be bad guys. And you watch what I do, and I don't try and do fancy things. If they want someone who's going to be a big fun baby face, I wouldn't have been picked.
Yes.
But the whole point with this was that they watched what I did and went, he's very good at this one thing that we need.
Yeah.
And that's where I slot in. And I think that he got that from the tryout, because I think a lot of the time too, and this is my advice to newer wrestlers, is that if you're doing something and people like what you're doing, and then you get a tryout, or then you get a chance, or then you do something, just do what it is that you did before.
Yes. Yeah.
Because a lot of wrestlers will sort of be like, oh crap, I'm on this big stage, I've got to try and be Will Ospreay. And all of a sudden they try and do a bunch of stuff that they've never done before. And everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
That's not, you know what I mean? Like, you got to come with who brung you to the dance, like the whatever kind of thing. And I think the fact that I got these opportunities and then just did what I did, they went, okay, we can trust him and do his role and the kind of stuff on the thing. So that was sort of, I think the beginning of it was that it's like, okay, he gets it. This is a similar thing. And this is something that will actually fit.
Yeah.
From there, and we sort of had discussions, and then he came back the second time, and we've tagged before. Yeah. Like one of the biggest honors I had was that I wrestled Jushin Thunder Liger 3 weeks before he retired.
Yeah. Amazing.
It was sick. Like, it was Robbie Eagles and Jushin Thunder Liger versus me and Farley.
Yeah.
And that was sort of where we started to really move towards it, and then everything shut down.
So the seeds were planted nice and early, but then obviously the world stopped moving. But when I think about Bonza, like, obviously you have a sort of militant persona and vibe, and that's your entire thing. And then you think about Bullet Club, and you think about, the Rogue General Farley and stuff, and you're like, of course it was going to be Bonza. Like, like it works, right? Like, yeah.
No, it all fits together. We work well together. And so it's just it's natural fit.
Tell me about the actual show where it all went down. So I have been away. I was actually over in Melbourne. I was catching some tours and seeing some different things. I had just seen on the news that this had gone down. So tell me about the show and what took place.
Yeah, so PWA just finished its first East Coast tour. Mm-hmm. So over the month of October, we went from Queensland to Melbourne, back to Newcastle and Wollongong, and then it sort of capped off at the University of New South Wales Roundhouse in the heart of Sydney. Mm-hmm. So that was that's PWA, stepping out and being like, okay, we're back. Yeah. we're trying to take this place over. We're gonna do all this stuff and have a big swing, because PWA and even with Tamashii too, this is all the same sort of deal, is that the idea of the company is to be a sustainable Australian pro wrestling company.
Yes.
we don't want to rely on flying international wrestlers in order for our cards to be great.
Yes.
We want to be able to have a big show and charge more for tickets and do all this kind of stuff, have all the extra production values and have it be a uniquely Australian brand. So that's the aim of PWA, is to try and do something where we can be a big touring brand, but we've just got Aussies. Because there's so many of us. And like my dream, my goal was always, because I spent tons of time in America. I hated it.
Yeah.
So much of the wrestling is very, very good. And a lot of the people there in wrestling are very good and all that kind of stuff. And the training was fantastic and I had a great time. But actually living there, I did not like it one bit.
Yeah.
So then I come back to Australia and I'm like, I want to live here. But the wrestling here there's no stage. There's nothing here that I want to be on, because the biggest thing was maybe 100 or 200 people in front of, like $5-10 tickets in front of nothing. There was no screen, there was no smoke, there was no promo value, there was no live stream, none of these things existed. So PWA and my involvement in PWA has just been to try and drag it up kicking and screaming to the point where you can be somebody here. And that's sort of the goal of Tamashii too, is if you look at like New Japan Strong, and that's sort of what the goal of Tamashii is for Australia, is that they can have American wrestlers who then are able to use the New Japan platform to a degree while still just being in America, and they can become known names just by being there. Yeah. Not that there aren't other platforms in America already, but that was just another one. But to create one here in Australia, and that's sort of the goal. And the LFG, like the PWA Roundhouse show, was really the big statement. So we ended up like we have a live band. There was a firehead dancer for one of the entrances. One of the other entrances had like the WrestleMania, I think it was WrestleMania 3, where they all got brought in on carts with the ring, like the famous giant. So that was Ricky South's entrance all the way to the cage. Like there was just all these things that we put in there, the massive 3 screens, and like there was 600 plus people in the place. Like the whole thing went off. Like, it was amazing. And then that was the place where we had Fale come out with Shingo, and that's where I joined Bullet Club. Yeah. So like the whole thing was supposed to be have the peak Australian event, and then have this be like, because the whole concept is we're trying to be noticed on a world stage. Yes. So what better place in order to have, one of the arguably the most famous indie stable. Bullet, if you can even, I guess you wouldn't consider New Japan indie, but you know what I mean? Like every indie wrestling fan knows what Bullet Club is.
Absolutely.
New Australian member fucking out of nowhere on the PWA show.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And then you're getting, Pro Wrestling Australia talked about on the New Japan website.
Yeah.
Through that. Like, so, and you have just somebody who's just a pure Australian wrestler, always been pushing the Australian stuff. Bang, there he is. Yeah. So that was that was the goal, and that was the that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to use that to launch the Tamashii, which looks huge. I think seated tickets were sold out in less than 2 hours.
Yeah.
So like that place is going to be packed with people.
Yeah.
And it should be, and the full card got released. Looks like a fantastic card. Like everything's, it feels like the momentum's back. Everything's going our way on this one.
Absolutely. I think you guys knocked it out of the park with the way that played out. And you did, like anybody that isn't, like I have been aware of PWA, you know what I mean? But I don't watch every show. I'm in Perth, and all those kind of things. But I sure as fuck knew about that when that happened. You know what I mean? It was all over my Twitter. It was, in the New Japan news feed, podcasts, and people are tweeting about it and stuff like that. So mission accomplished. And then now that sets the stage leading into these new events. So this is a perfect segue now to begin talking about it. So there's 2 shows coming, November 11th and November 13th, one in New Zealand and then one in Sydney. Yes?
That's right.
Yeah, no worries. Now,
November 11th in Christchurch, and then Sydney Liberty Hall.
Absolutely. Now, are you are just on the Sydney show, or you were on both?
I'm on both.
Both?
So in November 11th, I'm wrestling Jake Taylor.
Great. Mm-hmm.
And then November 13th, it's myself, Fale-san, Kenta-san versus the Velocities and Matt Rogers, Speed Force.
That's huge. Now Jake Taylor, I would know from Lions Roar, right? He was one of the Fale Dojo guys. Is that right?
Yeah, he's one of the guys who's been training at Fale Dojo for a while. So I think this might be his first sort of foray into having a local New Japan show too. So
Yeah,
it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what all the young lions are doing too, because there are 4 of them on Sydney, and then I think a lot of the rest of them are in New Zealand as well. So I mean, from them, I mean, geez, can you imagine training in the Fale Dojo for that long?
Yeah.
I think you talk about our side of the country having it worse. New Zealand. The lockdowns in New Zealand, man, like, so those guys training through that 2 or 3 year period, and now this finally must feel like a light at the end of the tunnel for them. So those guys are putting in a lot of work, and I mean, that's something you've always got to respect in the end. You know, there's nothing worse than seeing somebody who puts in no work somehow flukes exams, but when you see someone who worked very, 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 very hard, which must be those guys, because I've been to the Fale Dojo, I've trained there for an extended period of time. I know how hard that place is.
Yeah.
For them to sort of live there.
Yeah.
And
during that time, like the Lions Raw documentary is amazing, right? Like what they were doing was crazy.
Yeah. And then this is their match. This is their 8 to 10 minutes that they get to show for all that.
Yeah.
So unfortunately for Jake, I'm gonna have to put him down.
Yeah. Sorry, Jake.
But
exactly. How long did you train at the Fale Dojo for?
I was there for like a month.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
It's just one of those things, you know. Like, I just wanted to go over there and get to know the process and see everybody, and then it's also just sort of prove it, you know. Like, everybody talks, man. Like, every wrestler you talk to is going to be like, oh, I'm the best wrestler and I deserve these spots and I do this, and this, man. Fucking well done is better than well said. Like, you know, if you want to be part of the New Japan Dojo, it's like, I'm married and I have a kid. I can't go somewhere for 6 months and do all that kind of thing. But I can go over there and make those young lions my bitch for a month. Like, you know, just be like, you know, so when I say that I can do this, what I mean is that I'm going to kick your ass. Yeah. And of course, I'm dying on the inside, but you don't let anybody show that.
No,
my rookie referred to me. It's funny because sometimes I'll run training in Newcastle or PWA, and everybody else will be around me, will be dying, and I'll be fine. And I'll laugh at them because they're fitter than me. and then some of the Newcastle rookies refer to me as battle hardened. Yeah. Because I'm sitting there going, you're fitter than me, but you're not doing it. And it's because just, I think after 15 years in wrestling and training and traveling to get to the training and doing all the stupid things that I've done, it's not that I'm fitter. I'm just mentally, I'm so much more used to abuse.
Yeah.
Than a lot of the other guys that you just sort of just wear it better.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a conversation with somebody else recently where we talked about, you know, ring fit, how veterans like Arn Anderson and Tully say that the worst thing you can do in wrestling is stop, because you know, you build up that sort of ring hardness and it's just like it carries you through sort of thing, and then the moment you stop, your body has a chance to get used to not going through it, and then it's down. And so for you, it's just constant, right?
Yeah, you just got to keep pushing it, and that's why partly the lockdown was so hard, because you have to get it back, especially when you get COVID.
Yeah,
because COVID saps your cardiovascular. Like, even after you've you don't have COVID anymore, your fitness just in general,
yes,
it's terrible because it still affects you. So when you have the lockdown and then you get COVID and then you don't really get your lungs back. The thing about wrestling people may not understand is you can do all the sprints and burpees and stuff that you want, but when you're wrestling, you're getting hit.
Yes.
Like, it's like being a football player. It's like you can run all the sprints you want, but when you're getting tackled over and over again, or boxers, they have to be 10 times as fit as you need to just punch for 15 rounds or 10 rounds or whatever like that, because at the same time, they're getting punched. Yeah. Like, when it saps your conditioning to get hit. So when you're in wrestling and you're taking bumps and you're getting hit and you're running around and you're grappling and stuff, and you're doing a ton of different things without very much rest, it's its own special kind of fitness.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's have a look at this this card real quick, and I'll see who you can tell me about. And if you can't, that's fine, because there will be some on this first show. There will be some Fale Dojo young lions that you may not be familiar with. But the first match is Richard Malou versus Jordan Allen Wright versus Mark Tui, I believe it is. Are you familiar with any of these gentlemen?
Is this the Christchurch show?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I know Mark.
Mm-hmm.
I know Mark. I've known Mark for a while. He was at the dojo when I was there. He's got I would say the main thing I know about Mark is he's got a strong boxing background.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure he's got hands like lead.
Punches
He's probably got that fitness, man. But no, other than that, I probably can't speak to the young lions very much. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine. We'll keep on cruising on. Then it says it's yourself and Jake Taylor. Sorry, Jake. Then we're on to the third match: the Philippe brothers versus Nikolai Anton Bell and Rowan Davis.
Right. So the Philippe's are now, I think they must be the former at least 2-time MCW tag team champions.
Yeah.
Brothers, they're just I think they might have, I can't remember if they won one of the Farley Dojo tryouts. Like the pre-COVID ones, and they went over there and they trained for 3 months. They went through all that. So they're dojo boys themselves. But now they're just hanging out in Melbourne, and I guess this is their opportunity to get back in the New Japan fold. Very, very good athletes. They dives, Phoenix Splash, like anything you want to do, those guys can do anything. Wow. So it'll be interesting to see them. I would say they're junior weight division boys, junior heavyweights. That's it. So that should be a good tag match. But I don't know anything about the Young Lion dojos. That's where this stuff gets interesting, right? Because I know about the Philippes and I've seen their matches and stuff like that. I haven't seen any of the Young Lions matches, but they've been training hard, man. You don't do 6 days a week in that dojo for 4 years.
Absolutely.
And not become a buy-in. So it'll be really interesting. They might upset them.
Yeah, there might be some new stars launched out of this. We don't know. We don't know what Farley's been cooking up there. There could be some absolute weapons coming up. I mean, the fourth match, let's talk about a weapon now, somebody who's completely rebuilt himself, is Michael Richards. He's going to be versing Jeff Cobb. Michael Richards has been with Farley a long, long time. He had his and he had that like debut in Japan, right? And it didn't go that way, and he was sort of shunned for it, and he went back and sort of rebuilt himself from scratch, and has really become sort of the leader of that dojo. So this is going to be a huge coming out match for him against Cobb.
Oh yeah, you got to imagine he's looking to impress. Yeah, the amount of pressure. I think what that'll come down to is a couple things. Like, for one thing, Jeff Cobb. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, I know it's a fucking tough draw.
You couldn't ask for a worse opponent. Like in terms of someone. Like if you're trying to win a match, you couldn't ask for Jeff Cobb's a fucking monster.
Yeah, Farley has not looked after him here.
I wrestled Jeff Cobb a few years ago, and when he picked me up, I felt like a baby again.
Wow.
He was the strongest. Like I'm 100, depending on on the day, between 108 and 112 kilo man.
Yeah.
Like I'm 6 foot. Like I'm not a small guy, and he fucking picked me up, and I was nothing. It felt like it was a football. Yeah. Like, and he could just throw me. He's ridiculous level power. So that's what Michael Richards has got to contend with. But man, Michael, you just got to think about how much pressure he's going to put on himself.
Yeah, he wants it. Jesus,
he's going to want it. Like, he's going to be working ridiculously hard. Like, you see all the body transformation stuff he does with his diet, and this is all he obsesses over. This is all he'd be doing
for years now. Years as a young lion, maybe one of the longest running ever. With everything that's happened, and then with the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, so he's got to be hungry.
You gotta respect the persistence.
Absolutely.
Plus all the other kind of stuff. So I think the thing that I would worry about, like if he were my trainee, the thing I would worry about is him putting too much pressure on himself.
Yeah.
The last thing you want is that extra bit of stage fright because you're putting too much on it. So I think that's what'll be interesting is to see the performance, whether he can relax and just do what he does and do his best, and then sort of get through there and show that he's improved himself and what a weapon athlete he is. So I think he'll do well.
Absolutely, I'm so pumped for that match. Then next up is your boy Kenta-san versus Andrew Villalobos.
Yeah, that'll be interesting too. Villalobos is a big boy.
Yes.
I think he actually come from Sydney originally, but he's a fucking big man. So, he'll have a fairly significant size advantage on Kenta-san. So that one could be an upset too. That's what's interesting too. Because the other part of this too is you got to think about traveling. Like, so you got like Kenta-san's going to come from Japan, probably has an early flight, does all the kind of stuff, and then he's going to go straight to the ring against the guy who's been obsessing about this match, I'm sure, for months.
Yeah.
Who's probably 4 or 5 inches taller than him.
Like, ripped to the gills. Like,
by 3 kilos or something like that. Like, Bill Ross is a big boy. So like if he can pull something out. But again, I just know so little about these guys' actual wrestling style.
Yeah.
Like when we get to the Sydney card, I'll be able to speak a lot more in depth about the PWA guys.
That's cool.
I think it's probably the same for everyone. Like you don't know what they're going to do, which makes it interesting. One of my favorite things in wrestling is to watch matches with guys who I just have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
Like there's something about two guys tying up and just not having a single idea on what they're gonna do next. That's just, I don't know. It's like something tantalizing about it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's like, how is this conflict going to resolve? Like, you don't know any of their skill set. You don't know move set. You don't know any of that. You're like, what's going to happen? And then sometimes you just get blown away, right? And you're like, yo, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, well, Kenta might just beat him in 10 seconds. You don't know.
That's it.
What's going to happen.
Or you could turn around and, like you say, old mate's been obsessing about this for months. He's probably watched every Kenta match that's ever happened in human history. You know, he's juiced up all fucking on like training under Fale, just drilled, and like he might turn around and wipe Kenta away, you know, and you're like, yo, who is this? Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Super
like,
interesting.
I guess it'll probably be similar to a lot of people watching me against Shingo. They're probably thinking, Shingo's going to kill this guy, and then it's like, and then he does it.
No. Exactly right.
And then you go to the Bullet Club, so that's you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. They would have been like, oh, who's this Sydney jobber? And it's like, no, mate, that's not. And then the last minute is the Bone Soldier, Taiji Ishimori, and the one and only Bad Luck Fale versus AEW's Aaron Solo and Tony Casina. Now, do I know Tony because he is the other coach at the Fale Dojo? Like, in the
doc. He's been there for a few years now too.
Yeah, I think I saw him wrestle in Sydney too.
Yeah, he's American.
Yes.
He's an American dude. But I can't see. That's the thing, is I don't know what happened during lockdown. I don't know whether he's stuck in New Zealand or whether he's only just come back.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's Fale Dojo coach. So yeah, he's a very hard man too. Like, he's one of the things. Like, I think one of the stories about him was that he did his international flight from America, got off the flight, and it was the first day of training. And then that morning, they all have to do like 1,000 squats on their first day, and he did it with them.
Wow. And
they were just kind of like, we would have understood if you didn't, because you just got off this flight. And he just kind of went, it's important to me that you know that I'm doing it too.
Yeah.
Which is a similar attitude to myself.
Yes.
Like, when it comes to doing stuff, it's like, you can't just sit there on a stool and tell the rookies to do 1,000. So it doesn't work like that. They need to know that you will eat them.
Yeah.
And so, a man with that kind of attitude is good. And then, I mean, Aaron Solo, I last saw him in AEW.
Yeah.
Like that's why he popped up in one of the matches there, and plus the New Japan Strong stuff. So he's killing. He's a Fale Dojo boy too. Mm-hmm. That's the interesting thing, is a lot of these guys are from Fale Dojo.
Yeah.
And then they're going to wrestle Fale. It's like, oh God.
It's like they'd be thinking, maybe this is my time to pay him back for all those squats, but I'm sure Fale has a completely different idea, and they're going to find out.
Man, I'm standing next to Fale. We're doing the Rogue Army thing, and he's just got this pose like he just does. And I'm like, I looked at him and just went, "You look like you're made of iron."
Yeah.
Like, he looks big, but he's deceptively big.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, fuck, he makes me look so small standing next to him.
I think I've got a photo on this wall in front of me of me, Amy, and Mo, and Fale. It was like they had like a party before Wrestle Kingdom, and we went there, and he's just like an entire head, like taller, like behind us, just like looming over the group kind of thing. He's a very large man. He's
an absolute mountain of a human being. Yeah. So, and Bone Soldier too, of course. He's a ridiculous athlete.
Yeah.
So quick. Fuck, that'd be a rough tag team, man. Because, I mean, normally the heavyweights and the junior heavyweights sort of stick to their own divisions. But now you got Bone Soldier, who's so fast and so snappy, and then, the Man Mountain. Bad luck.
I love that. I love that juxtaposition for a tag team. I really like that team. I would love to see that in like World Tag League or something. That would be hot. That would be really cool.
Yeah. Well, something like that maybe. Ishimori's son fights up or something. But yeah, I couldn't imagine Fale in the juniors.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously World Tag League, not Super Junior Tag League. I don't know how they'd pull that off. Anyway, jump into Sydney. We open up. Now, this is November 30th at Liberty Hall. We open up with Jeff Cobb versus Carter Deems. Now, I am unfamiliar with Carter Deems. Are you?
I'm quite familiar with Carter Deems. So
cool.
I actually I trained him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Day. And then he did the 3 months at Fale Dojo. Oh. So he's done both.
Wow.
If you actually look back at the match against Yuji Nagata, I had a flag bearer in front of me who was waving the big Jack Bonza flag in front of me. That was him.
Oh, wow. Okay. I do remember the flag waver. I did not know that was him. Yeah.
That was Carter Deems, man. Yeah. So he's been a standout trainee since day one. He's just an insane natural athlete. Very tall. He's like 6'5" or something, and he's still a very young man. I think he's only 23 or 24. So he's probably got some filling out to do, and he's just getting bigger. So him versus Jeff Cobb is going to be very interesting because he's strong, but he's also quite fast and wiry. He does like scissor kicks, like a lot of super kick combinations and stuff. Like he's that's going to be a very interesting matchup. But yeah, Carter Deems is the guy that you would think would eventually get sent to Japan.
Yeah.
For the dojo as well as one of the younger things. He probably got his toe stubbed by the pandemic. As well. So he's making a comeback. He's a Newcastle Pro Heavyweight champion at the moment.
Okay.
Too.
Yeah, cool.
So he's doing a lot of stuff. He won the gimmick battle royal at the PWA Roundhouse event that just happened. So he's got a lot of momentum going for him too. So that'll be really cool to see him get that match.
Yeah, that's awesome. After that, we go to a tag match between Michael Richards, Andrew Villabos, Caveman Ugg, and Ricky South. Now, I'm familiar with all of the men in this match, but take people through Ricky South and Caveman Ugg since we haven't spoken about them yet.
Well, Ricky South's the PWA heavyweight champion.
Yes.
So he's one of the guys who's come through the PWA dojo. He's one of the few guys on the events that hasn't actually been to the Fale dojo. So he's a bit of an outlier, but he's just one of those guys who he's probably the hardest worker of anyone I've ever countenanced. And the joke story we always tell with him is not a joke, it was real, but like it was we had ring crew one day and we said, okay, everybody get to the because everyone at PWA always helps, right? Everyone helps. It doesn't matter whether it's Robbie Eagles or Madison Eagles or whatever. They're doing ring crew. Everybody helps. That's just part of the culture. So get to the dojo at 10 a.m. to pack down the ring, take it to the venue, and then we'll put it up. So one of our rookies is like, you know what? I'm gonna get there at 9:30, and I'm gonna get ahead of everybody, and I'm gonna get a start. And then that way, that's going to, make me look good to the coaches and stuff because I was here fucking early. I've started doing what I can. I'm going to get the truck ready. We do all that kind of gear. He gets there at 9:30. Everybody else is supposed to get there at 10. He gets there, and the ring is already completely packed onto the truck. There was nothing left to do when he got there half an hour before everything was done because Ricky had gotten there at 8:30 and done it all himself.
Got to get up a little bit earlier than you, mate.
We had to contact everybody else, the other 15 people who were supposed to come and help with ring crew.
Yeah.
And tell them not to bother coming.
Because Ricky did it.
Because Ricky had already done it. That's Ricky South. He's there was something like a while ago where it was like, we had to send him to hospital. Like he had something, like he's there 6 days a week, and he's like, there was something wrong with him, and he's like, I'll go for training. I'm like, you're going fucking now. And he had to get like his lung drained. Jeez. Like he doesn't stop. He just refuses to stop. Like he's healthy as a fucking bull now.
Yeah.
Like not to put it down, but that's just his mindset is that he is always gonna be the first one pushing. Trains 5-6 days a week on top of all the other stuff like that. He's fucking unstoppable. Yeah. So, and then you've got his partner is Caveman Ugg.
Monster.
Oh man, like
What a team.
that's gonna be a very hard tag team to beat. So they're just some of the most skilled, hardest men. Like again, Ricky in ring is just untouchable. Because the other thing is too, like PWA Dojo and a lot of the other things is the variety. So like he's well versed in lucha, like in more the Japanese style. Like we probably don't have as much of a British influence, but like since like Charlie Evans and a couple of those people came back, we sort of pick up on a lot of those things too. So and then plus the Australian style and normal American style. So there's tons of that kind of stuff coming through. So very like I can't recommend like Ricky South or Ugg enough in terms of every aspect of a wrestler that you could possibly want. So and then there's the young lions who, as I've already sort of discussed, have that background. So there's nobody on this show who isn't like a ridiculous level athlete or hard worker, because I think the whole point of it, we'll discuss it more, I'm sure we'll go on about it, but the whole point of this show is to be like, not to be, we can start to get better and work towards the point where we can, maybe be considered for New Japan. The point of this show is to be like, no, we're good now.
Yeah. This is New Japan Australia. Like this is
well, it's just that nobody's looking. We just need the platform. So a lot of these guys who are getting shots, they're getting shots because they're the guys who are ready now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking as I read this. I don't know why on the New Japan page, but all the matches are completely out of order. So I'm just going to read them down in a list, and we don't know what they are because it goes like 3rd, 6th, 7th, 1st, whatever. Fuck. That's the New Japan schedule for you. That's what they do. So then it's got Taiji Ishimori versus Mick Moretti. Now, obviously, we've talked about Bone Soldier. Mick Moretti is somebody that you're maybe the most familiar with of anybody I could imagine to speak about him. So I'll let you wax lyrical about that amazing person.
He's my tag team partner. And you ever see the Dave Chappelle skit with Charlie Murphy and Rick James?
Of course.
The bit where he says like he kicks him across the room, and the way he describes him, he says like he's a line stepper. He's a habitual line stepper. He steps over the line. I smack him. We go back to being friends, and then the whole process repeats itself.
Yes.
That is my relationship with Mick Moretti.
Is he the habitual line stepper or you?
He's the habitual line stepper, and then I've got to smack him, and then we go back to being friends. So like, we're former PWA tag champs. We've been with King of Trios 2-time in a row finalists. Like we've done everything together. We're an almost unstoppable tag team. I'd peg us against anybody as a tag team, and we come out on top. No one beats the nations. But again, there's just always that line stepping because he just likes to fuck with me. Like you look at the like my very militant, ordered way of doing things. I'm straightforward, serious. I beat people up. I put them in holds. It's a very disciplined wrestling style and mindset that works very well for me. His is the exact opposite. He's a nut job. Like he's very crazy. He stands on his head. He misdirects you, but he knows what he's doing. But he absolutely throws his opponents off every single time, which is what makes it such an interesting match. Because you've got Bone Soldier, who again is very fast, but he's very straightforward. Whereas Mick likes to work around people.
Yes.
And Mick's definitely another one of those guys who is ready now. So he'd be an interesting one to like to send over to Japan and do that kind of stuff. Like the same kind of level as myself, for example, or like Robbie. So that's sort of where Mick is at. So for him to show that against Bone Soldier in Maine, like Mick could beat him.
Yeah.
And not to put that on to say anything negative against Ishimori's son or whatever like that, but I'd be concerned because of just, Mick, same thing. He'll watch all Ishimori stuff. I can't imagine Ishimori is watching that much Mick Moretti stuff. Maybe he is. And maybe he's going to be ready. But it's going to be a very interesting matchup because you've got that very weird contrast of the guy who's going to be around and he's going to do all the character and stuff. And then Ishimori starts just trying to come forward and get him. He doesn't know what he's going to hit. So I don't know if he knows what he's running into because Mick's world class.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like his persona and presentation and stuff would be really popular, in that Japanese market. They love the characters and the bright colors and all those kind of things. And he's so crazy. I feel like they would absolutely love it.
Be something different. It'd definitely be something very, very interesting and different, which is always good in wrestling. Anyway, but the fun thing for me is like I'm Bullet Club, but I'm also Nations.
Yes, you're torn. You're torn in the middle here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd kind of like to see Ishimori slap him, so I don't know how torn I am.
He's doing the line stepping, slapping for you in this one.
Yeah, no, it'll be someone else can take it over for once.
Yeah, well, that works out. Okay, then we jump back to the first match, apparently, and it's Unsocial Jordan versus Jordan Allen Wright. Now, Jordan Allen Wright was a young lion that we weren't that familiar with, but Unsocial Jordan, I assume, is somebody that you're very familiar with. It's a name that I have heard for sure.
Yeah, he's cool. He's an interesting character. He's probably one of the more underrated guys in Australia because he's just a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like the guys who everybody talks up on Twitter and wants flown everywhere are the good guys who do lots of flippy moves. He's a bad guy. He's the fun police. You know, SMS, which is his faction, very strongly believe that events should be family friendly for kids. And it's hard to argue, really, is that there shouldn't be any swearing, there shouldn't be any sexual references, there shouldn't be any drinking, so that it's okay for kids as well to show up if they want to come up. But when we all laugh at them and flip them off and tell them to go fuck themselves, as you do, they didn't respond very well to that, so they responded with force. So he's basically he's the fun police. He's the right to censor. He's all that kind of thing. But he's also a very good and a very effective wrestler. So yeah, he's going to be an interesting fit. He's probably a little bit different to the rest of the guys because he's not quite as physical. Everybody who comes out of the PWA school is incredibly skilled and fit and strong. But that's not as much of his repertoire as it is for someone like Caveman Ugg, who's you're going to break your fist punching him in the face. So that'll be a very interesting dynamic and something different for the Young Lions. I actually think he'll be one of the harder guys for the Young Lions to stand up to because they're going to be very disciplined, straightforward, and he's going to be the experienced guy who's going to just oh, you're trying to punch me, I'm going to do all these different things on the match is over.
Yeah.
So he'll be a fun one. Another big character.
Yeah,
from PWA.
That's awesome. So many huge characters coming out of PWA.
Yeah.
Then with Aaron Solo, we've spoken about Lyrebird Lucci.
Yeah, he's going to be similar to Unsocial Jordan.
Okay.
Lyrebird Lucci, he's just such a piece of shit.
I spat my water over my keyboard.
Everyone hates him so much. He's such a little bitch. He's been going around in a wheelchair the entire LFG tour, and he just keeps winning. He just barely got beat in the recent one. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to bring the wheelchair for this one or not. But he's just the worst. And then he wrestles matches in wheelchair. Of course, he'll jump out of his wheelchair at the opportune time to take advantage.
But he has the wheelchair in the ring. It's like, I can't wrestle because I'm in the wheelchair, and then he rolls somebody up.
And then he smashes him over the head with it. Like, that's the kind of stuff he does. He likes his poetry. He likes living in the woods. Like that's just sort of he's that very not like Raven, sort of in his own way, but he's a woodsman. Like he's a hobbit. Like he's sort of he likes that kind of stuff. But again, like most of everyone at PWA and Fale Dojo for certain, and he's a Fale Dojo guy. Oh. So he survived the 3 months over there. Same as I think he went with Ugg and Ben Payne, Tyler Payne, at the same time. And they sort of had to do that together. So very tough physically, but also one of those guys who's very cerebral. Yeah. So taking on Aaron Solo, that's going to be interesting because Aaron Solo has a lot more ring experience than a lot of the other guys. So that should be a very interesting clash. But I think that even being from America as opposed to the Australian fans and all that different stuff, I think you'll find that the fans will be very firmly in Aaron Solo's corner for that one.
A very dislikable gentleman.
Yeah, very much. I mean, but Lucci can throw down too. Like he was a boxer. Plus the PWA stuff, plus the Fale Dojo stuff. So he's a very high level wrestler, as well as all the various things he does. But he just keeps winning. Yeah. That's probably the most accurate description I can give of Lucci. He's a winner. Doesn't always deserve to win, but somehow he just finds himself in that spot where he just always wins.
Just gets it done.
So it'll be interesting. Yeah, he does. He does. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes in that spot.
That sounds like a fun one. The fourth match, it says, apparently, I think we're at like the seventh in order, but whatever. It is, of course, yourself, Bullet Club with Bad Luck Fale and Kenta-san versus Matt Rogers, Jude London, and Paris De Silva. I believe Jude London and Paris De Silva are the Velocities. Is that correct?
That's right.
And Matt Rogers, I'm not familiar with.
Oh, okay. So he's another Newcastle Pro PWA wrestler.
Okay.
He did some time at the Fale Dojo, probably similar time to me. He's probably there for like a month or something like that. And so yeah, he's just a big ass kicker. He was known as Full Force Matt Rogers. So that's why when the Velocities and him get together, they're Speed Force.
I see. The nickname Full Force kind of tells you everything you need to know about him, really, doesn't it?
Pretty much. He does a big boot and does a pump handle slam, and he basically never loses. He's just a big, tough, strong guy.
It's great gimmick to have.
Can't put him down. So
yeah.
he's a good addition to the Velocities because the Velocities are so fast and so technical and high flying. But I mean, if there was a third Velocity against Fale and myself, like in Kenta, it's going to be a bit rough for him because eventually we'll get our hands on it. But he's their muscle. He's their brawn. So it's probably a good combination of the really fast guys with the really big strong guys, sort of like Ishimori-san and Fale. And so there would be a really cool dynamic. But I mean, there's another team that's just world class.
Yeah.
I mean, the Velocities is one of the best tag teams in the world. Them in Junior Tag League or something would be amazing. So it'd be cool to see them, hopefully they do well enough that they get noticed.
That would be awesome. I mean, they've been a team that's been on the lips of kind of everybody for a long time now, and they're kind of well and truly due for something really impressive.
They just got back from a tour of Europe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they went. I think they were the OTT and Rev Pro tag champs.
That's awesome.
While they were over there for brief stints, and they're still the I want to say SAJ. That I'm going to butcher the name, but there's an Italian wrestling company that they are the tag team champions of. Please look it up. So I haven't butchered the fact that there's a company we can be more respectful of. But yeah, so they're doing great things. Current PWA tag champs. So they're doing really good. It's gonna really hurt my feelings to have to crush them.
Yeah, what can you do? It's a hard cross to bear.
I've wrestled them so many times, and that's what's actually super funny about this match is that me and Moretti and Adam Hoffman or Jessica Troy have wrestled the Velocities and Matt Diamond or Matt Rogers. Like some combination of these 6-person tags happened so many times. Yeah. Except this time, instead of my tag team partner being Moretti and Hoffman, it's Kenta.
And Fale. Talk about
Fale, like when you look at when I remember from my 2008 discovering indie wrestling, going like, wow, Kenta, and now he's my tag team partner because we're in Bullet Club. It's just such a surreal moment, especially when I'm not wrestling against other members of New Japan. I'm wrestling against the guys that I wrestle against every week.
Yeah, you've just defected fully, and you're just aligned with some of the greatest wrestlers in the world. It's pretty wild.
Pretty much. I mean, it's about time more than anything, but also you gotta understand, because again, we're all professionals and we've been working hard for it, and we're at that level. I really believe that we're at that level, and we'll fit right in. I guarantee we'll fit right in. The match is going to be amazing, and you won't be looking at it like, oh, it's these amateur local Australian guys and these professional guys. We're all going to look like professionals because we all are.
Absolutely.
And that's the elite skill level that comes from PWA. Yeah. And it's always absolutely there. But Australia's so isolated from the rest of the country. That's why I find it different, and I just don't know if, say, American people or Japanese people or English people can really understand what it's like to be here, because I suppose it's like at any given indie fed in America, you are going to have some famous name wrestler. Maybe John Moxley pops up. Maybe someone else, maybe someone who every second card will have somebody who's a former WWE superstar. Those guys with that experience are just around because there's so much of it and there are so many people there. We don't often get that here. You don't have a lot of people who are former guys. That's why when Robbie Eagles is around, it's so valuable because he is that professional living that sort of life. But then he comes back here and tells us about it. We still hear from Grayson Waller all the time. The Matt Wahlberg who came from Australia, who's now, Shawn Michaels' favorite wrestler in NXT. There's all those things that sort of are coming back, but it's still so rare for it to really happen here. It's not something that we've been it's something we achieved. I suppose we earned it. Like when we first started, this stuff was a pipe dream, and now it's something that's actually happening. And so that's where like you look at it now, and it's it's 10 o'clock on a Friday night, but I'm here doing this interview because it's important. I'm going to the gym after this.
Oh,
like it's my second of the day.
Yeah.
So I got up this morning and I went for a run, and then I did my work day, and then I looked after my son, and then we put him to bed, and then I did an interview. Now I'm going to the gym again. And then when I get up in the morning tomorrow, I'm going to an amateur wrestling class, followed immediately by a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class before I come back and look after my kid again for the second half of the day, or my wife goes to a concert. So that, it's one of those things where it's like we have an opportunity that we've been working towards I've been working towards for 15 years.
Yeah.
This isn't something any of us take lightly, and we're good enough for it and we deserve it. But it's so rare. Like we don't have a WWE tryout or a New Japan tryout every second week. And now I'm in fucking Bullet Club, so it's one of those things that is not taken lightly by anybody here. Yeah. So everybody watching this or listening to this, you better tune in to whatever version of it you can, because we're going to be making the most of it. It's really like years and years in the making, and it's going to be great.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well said. I almost hate that New Japan laid out these matches so bad that we still got one to talk about, because that's a promo to end the interview with. But we do have one more to speak about. But what I will say is that your work ethic bleeds through this entire interview. Like, it's so impressive, and I can tell, like, everything you've done has built to this moment, and it's like you guys aren't going to let it slip. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're ready to work for it and see it done. And I can't wait for the rest of the world to understand what you guys are going to bring.
I describe it as kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
We are going to make this happen, even if we drag this opportunity from nowhere, kicking and screaming. Yeah. Everything that could possibly go wrong always goes wrong. And that's just an obstacle that you have to overcome, because that's the way it is. We never get disheartened because we just expect things to go wrong, but it doesn't matter because we're going to make it happen anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the work ethic. So no, we're not going to let it go. The last match is Lightspeed Express versus
Jake Taylor and Richard Malou. Yep.
Jack Taylor and Richard Malou. Yeah, that's right. So I think everyone knows about Robbie.
We do know a thing or two about Robbie.
I love giving Robbie shit so much. I mean, could you imagine being in the Bullet Club and voluntarily leaving? What an idiot.
I mean, you say this now, we'll see how your run turns out. You might be like, you know what? These guys are pricks. I'm getting out of here.
I don't see it. Yeah. But there are a couple of things about Robbie that I would put out. One, I am one of the very few proud owners of a Sniper Club Bullet Club shirt.
Yeah, there you go. I
have the Robbie Eagle shirt, and I wear it all the time in front of him just to piss him off. The second thing is that, and this is the problem with this is the problem with fans sometimes, is that I just love to needle him when people don't know that he's a famous wrestler.
Yeah.
It's just so good. But no, we are lucky to have Robbie, because he could just as easily piss off and never worry us ever again. But he's one of the hardest workers. Like, he's one of those guys he's like me. He started probably roughly the same time that I did, but when we started, this was a pipe dream, and he knows how much his opportunity means. So he never stops working, and he never stops helping us. He drags us with him as best as he can, and that's what he always does. He's always pushing the pace, and so much of you never get lazy with Robbie around, because he's always like, you could have the best match you've ever had, and then he'll just go, need to do this better, and this had to be better, and he could have faced the camera better here, and the announcer fucked up here, and this could have been here, and he didn't stick to time. You're 5 seconds off time, and he could have done this. But because he's like that, you always are trying to push to be better. He's another one of those guys with the ethic. And then you talk about my work ethic or his work ethic and that kind of thing, bleeds down.
Yeah.
The reason why Carter Deems and Ricky South and all that are like that is because we're like that. So it's really a cultural thing that's developed. And because of guys like Robbie, everybody else is like that too. And his tag team partner is Matt Diamond. And the reason why I think he's so stoked about this one is that him and Matt Diamond have been tagging for
forever,
many
right?
years.
Yeah.
Like Lightspeed Express are a good time. So you see all that kind of all the stuff that they've done together over the years. And Robbie's in Chaos. And was in Bullet Club and done all that kind of stuff. But Matt, unfortunately, because he's such an athletic guy, He's such a small guy. He gets thrown around a lot. So he had like a 4-year absence from wrestling because his back was so messed up. But he's an insane athlete. Like he deadlifts the same amount of weight that I do.
Really?
Like when he's in form. Yeah, I've seen there's video of him deadlifting 180 kilos. He only weighs 60.
Jesus Christ. That's
He's
crazy.
he's an incredible athlete. The same as Robbie is. Maybe not quite at the same, level of fame and skill and stuff now that Robbie's gone on to do, but he's just a fantastic wrestler. Them together is amazing.
Yeah.
So seeing them together is heartwarming for people who have hearts, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's cool for Robbie to be able to do all that kind of stuff. And then they're running into the New Japan young boys.
Exactly. I love that Robbie has brought him in, for this.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's really cool that it's like, let's let the New Japan audience see what this tag team was and is, and the potential of it is really cool.
The point of this is to show what the Australian guys can do and what the New Zealand guys can do. Mm-hmm. And so Robbie's like, this is what my Australian thing was before New Japan.
Yeah.
So if you only know my New Japan stuff, great. Here's what my Australian stuff was like that got me into New Japan in the first place.
Yeah.
Never forgets his roots. And that's the whole point of this, man. It's just, Tamashii is just a stage for what we're already doing.
Yeah.
I think that's my opinion of it. So yeah, it is really cool that that Matt Diamond can get in that and they can do their kind of thing. So I think that's a really I'm trying to think of the word. It's it just fits perfectly.
Yeah.
For the whole idea of the whole tour. I mean, Robbie could just as easily have main evented against somebody and we would have seen that or whatever. But for him to be able to tag with his partner, and his Australian partner and do all that kind of stuff, it's really cool moment.
Absolutely. I mean, from the moment I first met Robbie, like, just all about Australian wrestling. You know what I mean? All his dreams and everything are all based around lifting others up and building, the wrestling scene. He's really like a big picture guy who's trying to do that. I mean, even you and I speaking now is his doing, you know what I mean? Because he wants to connect people and grow Australian wrestling. And it's just so inspiring to see like everything he's done, and all his success couldn't happen to somebody that works harder or is kinder or anything like that. It's really going to be awesome to see these shows play out on New Japan World and see the world see how good you all are.
Yeah, well, I think that's where you take the measure of people. Like when you see the guys who make it, but still point back.
Yeah.
There are guys who make it and who forget about you and they're gone. Then there are guys who still point back. And Robbie's one of those guys. He's one of those guys who pushes really, really hard to bring everyone with him. Same with guys like Grayson Waller. Even like you see like Jonah.
Yes.
He still tweeted about his home Fed today. Like he put over there's a match with for the heavyweight title at Wrestle Rampage with Tommy Knight and Corn Dog. He's a really good guy and he's been working really hard down there, so he gets his heavyweight title match. But Jonah tweeted about it, he didn't forget about his guys. So that's the kind of thing that I think is really cool when I see guys make it, and I'm hoping to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's awesome, bud. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. You're the first wrestler that's ever been on Okada Shorts, and you're now the fourth official co-host of Okada Shorts. We've only had one other guest, but I don't consider them guests. I consider them co-hosts. So you're the fourth host, and I really thank you for your time for doing this with me and giving everybody a real peek behind the curtain, not only in your career, but also in everything PWA and New Japan Pro Wrestling that's coming forward. So tell the people where to follow you on social media so they can stay up to date on everything Jack Bonza and PWA.
Twitter is @BonzaJack. Instagram is Jack Bonza, and Facebook is Jack Bonza, but I can't remember the last time I posted on Facebook. So I think Instagram first, and then maybe Twitter. I can't stand Twitter. It's just as a general whole. But yeah, those are the two main ones as well. And PWA Australia or Pro Wrestling Australia. I think it's PWA. PWA at PWA Australia. And then near the website at prowrestlingaustralia.com.au as well. So those are probably the best places to keep up with everything. Strong recommend. You won't regret checking out any Pro Wrestling Australia event.
Absolutely. go back, check out the show at the Roundhouse where the mighty Jack Bonza joins Bullet Club and sets the stage for everything that's about to come in New Japan Tamashii. So I guess my sign-off, it's a little bit different without Curtis here, but I normally say something along the lines of rate and subscribe, listen or die, keep it right, keep it tight, and most importantly, keep it what? Short.
Hi guys, this is Lauren, your proud host of Your Dose of Death. Just giving you a little quick tune-in to make sure to listen to Your Dose of Death. Each and every single episode, I provide a different lens into the world of deathmatch, whether it be wrestlers, content creators, or anyone in between. Make sure to listen to me each and every single episode to get a different lens into the death. And please, make sure to listen to Your Dose of Death.
This has been a Count Out Podcast.